All right, guys, welcome to Beyond the Muscle. It is time for another solo episode today, and pretty fun topic. So, reaching true stage conditioning is, this week's chat. Before we get started, a little update on myself. So, in terms of my own training, I've reverted to a 4 day split for the first time ever. So, an upper lower split. Actually, I think I've done 4 days before, but not an upper lower. This is the first time I've done this, and yeah, really early days, but I'm excited to see how this is going to pan out. And this is in fact going to be another chat I'm going to do as well because I think there's a lot we can talk about here. So yeah, in the past, just to give like a brief summary on this, essentially I have been doing a fairly high volume style of training for most of my lifting career. And yeah, I think whilst that has yielded some good results, I'm kind of, as I'm getting older and a bit more wise, I'm gradually making the shift to a slightly lower volume of training with a bit more intensity. I think, yeah, you can pull the volume lever or the intensity lever. And I've had this kind of almost volume anxiety, I suppose you could call it, in the past, where I've accumulated so much training volume over the course of a week that I've been scared to let it go. And yeah, I'm gradually reducing the volume, up in the intensity. And so far the results look promising, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'll be having a few weeks off on the summer from the podcast as I'll be on holiday, but we have some very exciting guests coming up over the next couple of months, as always. And I'll also be going to a show. I'll be going to the BNBF Southern this year with Joshua Conde. And yeah, I'll probably do like a little, I'll see if Josh wants to do like a little show review of that particular one. So yeah, I always love the BNBF Southern. It's been a special venue for myself. So yeah, that'll be good. So, on to the topic of this conversation, getting into true stage condition. So, yeah, in the past, I've only competed in seven shows now. And yeah, despite only having done 2 seasons in bodybuilding, getting into like true stage condition has never been an issue for me. I went into bodybuilding with I'd say, a slightly skewed view on this topic because, in my head at least, back in 2015, the aim, as I mentioned before, the aim was just to get as lean as possible at the expense of everything else, shape, size, and all that. So I just thought I have to get shredded. Leanest person on stage has to be my one and only goal. And whilst, yeah, that's probably not the best way to approach things, it did get me very lean. And I have subsequently been able to get very, very lean for each of my shows. Um, so yeah, getting into stage condition is, yeah, despite the fact that I have been able to get very lean, it's obviously not easy. It's not easy for me. Or anyone for that matter. I don't think anyone gets into that kind of level of conditioning and kind of breezes. Yeah, it's a breeze. I think it's always a challenge. So yeah, I want to approach this from a few different angles, this topic. But before we do, what does it feel like to be stage lean? So a lot of you guys listening will be bodybuilders. You'll know what it's like. And I think we'll all feel these things to varying degrees. Obviously, low energy. That was a big one for me. That took a big hit, certainly towards from I say the midpoint of prep towards the end. Energy was a big one. Hunger, like the idea of kind of, or the feeling rather, of never feeling full. That was definitely prevalent. Once again, probably from that mid stage and then towards the end of prep, with obviously hormones like leptin and ghrelin being, yeah, dysregulated, it's going to have a huge effect there. Food focus is another one that's obviously linked to that. I remember I'd have oats quite a lot on prep, as a lot of bodybuilders do. And after my oats are finished, I'd feel like genuinely sad that like, sadder than I have any right to be that a bowl of oats is finished. And yeah, that was it's a big change obviously from that comparing it to normal life. Other side effects, obviously low libido is going to be an issue once again, only towards like the latter end of prep. Altered sleep, again, I think that was sleep was pretty good to be fair. My sleep, I would wake up early. That was my thing. I would obviously, and being that a lot of bodybuilding shows are in the summer months, and I'll be prepping around the spring time. I'll be waking up, yeah, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, struggling to get back to sleep. And another side effect that I think is not talked about much, but I've heard Steve Hall talk about this, and it really resonated with me, was that kind of sense of apathy or lack of emotional response to things. And I definitely got this. This was much more towards the tail end of prep, where something would happen, and I just didn't have that much of an emotional response, certainly less than what I would usually. And yeah, that was one of the less talked about, but also less desirable sides of prep for me. It's just not being as connected with other people, and I wasn't a big fan of how, I wasn't a big fan of that. So these are just some of the side effects that you can experience in prep, but obviously there are going to be more. It is an extreme thing, taking your body fat to those kind of levels. So obviously getting into elite condition it should be the aim, but there are times when I think it's not a good idea to reach those true kind of freaky levels of conditioning, and leave some in the tank. And I think one of those is if you're a teen. I think if you're a teen, potentially a good idea to keep a bit in the tank even for the entire season. Those are the years where you want to be kind of maximizing your muscle building potential when your testosterone levels are higher. So I think as any teen athlete, you probably want to be keeping a little bit in the tank, even if you do make the British final or world final, in my opinion. For your first show, that's another time where you probably don't want to be getting into true stage condition, or at least you want to be leaving a little bit in the tank, just because obviously it's a long season. You want to be saving your best for the latter shows. That one's kind of obvious. Another instance, if you don't have enough muscle, so a, a lot of teens might fall into this category, not all of them, but some. If you're 18, 19, the chances are you have not grown most of your muscle. You're probably only you've got a long way to go. You might be halfway there, or maybe even less potentially, potentially a lot less. But even if you're not a teen, but you haven't been training that long, I think getting super lean it might not yield the best look for you. So if you don't have the muscularity to pull off that shredded look, that also might be an instance where you want to just leave a little bit in the tank potentially. And another one is, this idea of sacrificing shape and that kind of general silhouette for condition too much, it's just not worth it. How much will depend on the individual. I've certainly experienced this last year where I had a really good shape in the middle three shows, but then by the end, I'd sacrificed some of that shape for a good condition, and it didn't yield a better look, in my opinion. So I might have been leaner, but it wasn't a better look. The best look was definitely in those middle three shows for me. So yeah, there are definitely times where you want to be aware of digging too deep when it comes to this. Um, let's move on next to what does it take to reach like true elite conditioning. The first one is time. So a long prep may be necessary to do so. So I started prep for my 2024 season. I started prep in mid-Feb, and my first show was in October, and I dropped from the very first show to my kind of what I would describe as like true station edition. I dropped about 10 kilos. So not a substantial amount of weight. There are bodybuilders who've had to drop so much more. I didn't have a pre-prep diet. That's the thing. So I went into my competitive season at a fairly lean body weight. Kind of, I will describe it as beach body lean. So yeah, there wasn't a tremendous amount of weight to lose there. So yeah, that's definitely a factor. Obviously, if you do have more to lose, then yeah, a pre-prep diet makes a lot of sense. Um, Another factor is like your body fat set point. So someone with a lower body fat set point or food drive is probably going to find the process of getting into competitive shape a lot easier. Not always though. There are certainly instances. There are certainly bodybuilders I know I've had in the podcast that push their body weight they push their body weight up in the off season and still reach what I would describe as like elite levels of conditioning. So Ben Lloyd is an example. He likes to get pretty heavy in the off season, but he always comes in extremely dialed in. Mark Willits is another one, classic champion who once again gets their body weight up very high, but yeah, reliably every single time gets that level of conditioning required. That doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for everyone, though. I think there's definitely a spectrum when it comes to body fat set point and how much we need to push things up in the off season. These two guys I've just used as examples are guys that obviously feel comfortable with their body weight a bit higher in the off season. with myself, I'd say I fall somewhere in the middle. And then I've had guys like Dirk Emmerich and Alberto Nunez who like to stay a bit leaner in the off season. And interestingly, they also have people have that kind of lower food drive, that lower set point or settling point. And yeah, it's just those two individuals arguably could find it a bit easier going through a contest prep because of that. So yeah, that the whole food drive thing is an interesting topic, and it's definitely one that could influence how lean you should get in the off season. Um, yeah, it's going to be hard, I think, regardless of how much food drive you have. It's going to be hard, regardless. Another factor to consider is we're kind of jumping forward a bit here, but I think it's an important one is peak week. So having a productive peak week, I think is a really good idea. It's obviously too much stress leading up to show day. It's going to blur lines, and for different reasons, too many carbs can also lead to spillover and create a kind of blurry look that you don't want on stage. So yeah, that getting that peak week right is going to be very important. Um, and it's actually quite interesting how you can be very, very lean, but if you mess up your peak, if you overcarb, if you're overstressed, it can actually really, really, deteriorate the look quite substantially. So often it's a good idea to not do anything too drastic on peak week, which yeah, it's a risk that's not worth taking, in my opinion. Too little carbs is another one as well on that peak week, which can lead to the muscles looking flat and stringy and just not pushing up against the skin enough. And yeah, it's yeah, obviously not a desirable look. Another factor when it comes to reaching that elite level of conditioning, and I think this is a bit of a left field comment, you have to be a little bit crazy. So what do I mean by this? You have to find enjoyment in the suffering. Now, obviously, it's not suffering in the traditional sense. This is completely self-inflicted, this bodybuilding that we do. We can exit this phase at any time. However, the body doesn't know that, and it will let you know in various ways that it doesn't like being this lean. So it's a good idea to have that mindset of you're in control of this. You're the one that's doing this to yourself. You can exit at any time, and yeah, just take enjoyment in that feeling of hunger. If you try and correlate that feeling of hunger with you getting leaner, at least in your mind, then that can be a good idea. So yeah, kind of what I mean by that is kind of flip it on its head and embracing the hunger and low energy. So yeah, just think of it as when you're feeling your worst, that's when your body is losing fat. Even if it isn't the case, I think it's a good mentality to have that mindset because it's yeah, it's challenging, I think, for anyone to get into these levels of conditioning. Um, Another factor is having the right environment around you. So having a good support group, having the right environment, obviously it's going to be very hard on them as well. So just make sure that you're talking with them throughout the process. Communication is key here. I think if with your significant other, with your friends, because it's going to be a challenging process, not just for you, but you've got to remember that it's your choice, and you should try it and make it as easy on them as you can. And this is something that I want to get better at as well with my own contest preps in the future. So yeah, let's just summarize what those points are so far. So what it kind of takes to really achieve that level of condition. Time is a big one. Set point as well. Um, Productive peak week, obviously, and yeah, having that kind of mentality where you just need to embrace the suffering. But yeah, I say those are some of the key components when it comes to reaching true stage condition. Alongside just having enough muscle in the first place, it's all well and good getting very, very lean, but you need to have a decent level of muscularity for that to look good in the first place, and that's the truth there. Um, that is pretty much it on this topic. I'd love to hear some of your guys' thoughts. What else does it take to really reach those elite level of condition? Is there anything you think I've missed there? I'll be curious to hear. Uh, that is all for this one. We just had a short one today, guys, but thank you for watching and for listening, and I'll see you next time.